If so, you're in the right place. So come on in and join the Joy Bunny clan. This is the My Slice of Life podcast. Hello and welcome to the My Slice of Life podcast with me, Sharon, your very own Highland host. This is the bonus episode for the Opening the Mystery Files season, which has just drawn to a close. And I started doing a bonus episode for seasons because I was finding there was more I wanted to talk to you about relating to the topic, but maybe not enough for a full episode. Maybe something I'd heard about or read about and I just wanted to say, hey, check this out, that sort of thing. The bonus episodes are shorter than the normal full episodes. Usually. It doesn't always work out that way. So, for this bonus, I was thinking about all the topics I didn't get to in this season. And there's a few actually, but there's a major mystery which I don't hear many people talking about. And I knew this is the one for the bonus. So here goes. Was Mary Kelly really killed by Jack the Ripper? We all know about Jack the Ripper and what he did, killing those poor women, and we know there are many theories out there about who he was or who they were, who else he might have killed, why he did it at all, and so on and so on. But there are a lot of people who believe Mary Kelly was not killed by Jack the Ripper at all. There are some who believed she survived and it was someone else entirely who was the last victim of Jack the Ripper. Now, you may have seen the horrendous photo taken of the poor woman who was killed in that room in Miller's Court, what was left of her anyway, and I'm not going to go through what was done to her because it really is horrific. But many folk believe it wasn't Mary Kelly at all, and you might be thinking, what a lot of nonsense. But what would you say if I told you there was not just one, but a few people who claimed they didn't just see her, they spoke to her after she was allegedly killed? Now, I've seen the movie From Hell a few times, and what they show there makes a lot of sense to me, but for this bonus episode, my main source of information is a book called The Ripper and the Royals, and it's written by a man called Melvin Fairclough. And I'm using this because he gives you the witness accounts which were taken by the police at the time, and he goes into the backgrounds of everyone involved. So if you're into this topic and you want to find out more, highly recommend it. It's The Ripper and the Royals by Melvin Fairclough. Fairclough. So let's start this mystery by giving just a little background, and I say a little because this is a topic where you can just keep digging and digging and digging. There are so many books, videos, theories, even tours about the topic. You can go on a Ripper tour if you go to London. There are 5 murders which are typically assigned to Jack the Ripper. The first woman was Mary Ann Nichols, who was murdered on the 31st of August, 1888. Then there was Annie Chapman on the 8th of September. Next was Elizabeth Stride on the 30th of September and Catherine Eddowes on the same night. Then things went quiet up until the 9th of November that year when it is said Mary Kelly was murdered. What we do know is someone was murdered that night in that room at 13 Miller's Court. The gruesome deed was uncovered when at 10:45 a.m. on the 9th of November, Thomas Bowyer went to Mary Kelly's room to get the rent money she owed. He told police he knocked at the door but didn't get any answer, so reaching through a broken window, he pulled the blinds back, saw the body of a woman on the bed, and he could see there was a lot of blood and figured she'd been murdered, so he immediately went to tell his employer, Mr. McCarthy, who owned the building and was due that rent money. Mr. McCarthy went and looked in the room as well and told Bowyer to go to the police station and tell the inspector on duty. Mary Kelly had been renting the room with a man called Joe Barnett, and they'd lived together for about 18 months, the last 8 months being in that room in Miller's Court. He had recently left her, though, as she had returned to prostitution when he was unable to work and support him, and Joe wasn't happy about her doing this, so he left. They had apparently separated on good terms, though, and Joe Barnett told police he had been to visit Mary Kelly the previous day between 7 to 8 p.m, and that was the last time he saw her alive. Statements taken by the police included one from a woman called Elizabeth Prater, who said she heard a woman scream of murder around 3:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning. She didn't take much notice of it, however, as she would often hear such cries coming from the area. And these screams of murder, though, were also heard by Sarah Lewis, who told police she'd gone to spend the night with friends after an argument with her husband, and she also heard a scream shortly before 4 o'clock in the morning, but she didn't look out the window to find out what was going on. It obviously was not uncommon to hear such cries and screams in that area at the time. Many people were interviewed by police, all saying when they had last seen Mary Kelly, including a man called George Hutchinson, who told Inspector Aberline he had last seen her at 2 a.m. on the 9th with a customer heading to her room. Just as a wee point of interest here, as the inquest into her murder was prematurely closed, his testimony about this was never heard. But now I want to read you the next statement in full. As Fairclough says in his book, this statement is the cause of a lot of debate because the woman claims to have seen Mary Kelly on the morning she was found dead, when medical evidence apparently showed she'd been killed 5 or 6 hours previously. So here's the statement of Caroline Maxwell as given to the police. I have known deceased women during the past 4 months. She was known as Mary Jane, and that since Joe Barnett left her, she has obtained her living as an unfortunate. I was on speaking terms with her, although I had not seen her for 3 weeks until Friday morning, 9th instant, about 8:30 o'clock. She was then standing at the corner of Miller's Court in Dorset Street. I said to her, "What brings you up so early?" She said, "I have the horrors of drink upon me, as I have been drinking for some days past." I said, "Why don't you go to Mrs. Ringer's and have half a pint of beer?" She said, "I have been there and had it, but I brought it all up again." At the same time, she pointed to some vomit in the roadway. I then passed on. I went to Bishopgate on an errand and returned to Dorset Street about 9 a.m. I then noticed deceased standing outside Ringer's public house. She was talking to a man, age I think about 30, height about 5 foot 5 inches, stout, dressed as a market porter. I was some distance away and am doubtful whether I could identify him. The deceased wore a dark dress, black velvet body, and coloured wrapper around her neck. End quote. Many people have suggested Caroline Maxwell got her days mixed up and she was just mistaken, but she was the wife of Henry Maxwell, who was a lodging house deputy, so I would suggest knowing which day it was and what errands you needed to do when would be pretty important to her and her husband. Now, the time of death for Mary Kelly was given at the post-mortem as being around 2 a.m. Remember, around the same time she was last seen, apparently, by George Hutchinson. A statement was given to police by Mary Ann Cox, who lived in room 5 Miller's Court, and she said she was also an unfortunate and had seen Mary Kelly with a customer the previous evening and had heard Mary singing in her room at 1 a.m. She also noted Mary Kelly was very drunk at the time. Now, Mary Ann Cox had gone out to work throughout the night, going out and coming back various times, and when she came back at 3 a.m, she said all was quiet and there was no light coming from Mary Kelly's room. She swears she heard nothing the rest of the night, not even the cry of murder. Despite all this, though, Caroline Maxwell repeated her form of events at Kelly's inquest, and for those who say she was mixed up, it is important to note she gave her original statement to Inspector Aberline on the day the body in Mary Kelly's room was found. Hardly likely to get the events mixed up when it's the same day. You might also be interested to find out that on the 10th of November, the Times newspaper reported an unnamed woman seeing Mary Kelly, giving all the timings Caroline Maxwell had said. Then a week later, the same newspaper reported a man named Maurice Lewis, who was a tailor from Dorset Street, said he saw Mary Kelly leave her room at 8 a.m. and return soon afterwards. He also claimed to have seen Mary Kelly in a pub with some other women just after 10 a.m, which was just 15 minutes after Caroline Maxwell said she had seen Mary Kelly standing outside the very same pub. At this point, I would like to go over 2 other issues regarding the dead woman found in 13 Miller's Court. Firstly, who identified the body? Well, that was done by Joe Barnett, Mary Kelly's partner. And you'd think that would be easy enough, but the body was so disfigured it would have been pretty much impossible to tell who that was. At the inquest, a written copy of his statement was used which said he identified her by the ears and eyes, but this couldn't have been, as the ears had been cut off. Now, Barnett was known to have a stutter, and it's believed he had been misheard when giving his statement. Some believed what he had actually said was the hair and eyes. It said Mary Kelly had thick dark hair, and being nicknamed Ginger at one time, we can assume it was a dark red colour. Could it be possible that the woman Barnett identified looked like she had the same colour of hair as Mary Kelly, because it was soaked in blood? As Fairclough points out in his book, Barnett would be stressed, grief-stricken, and expecting to see Mary Kelly in the room, and he was hardly going to have a real good look. I mean, a brief glimpse at best. It was horrific. The police, after all, thought it was her, and given that gruesome scene and everything else, is it realistic to think that Barnett would have even seen anybody else, would have been able to identify that body as being anybody else? I seriously doubt it. Which leads to the obvious question. If not Mary Kelly, then who? According to Melvin Fairclough in his book, it was a friend of Mary Kelly's called Winifred May Collis. In a diary written by Inspector Aberline in 1896, he quoted that after the supposed murder of Mary Kelly, Collis was, quote, never heard of again. And it's interesting to note he put a question mark at the end of that. And in the book, Fairclough writes that he feels, this is Aberline's way of telling us, it was Collis, not Kelly, who was murdered in 13 Miller's Court on the 9th of November, 1888. So if Mary Kelly wasn't murdered, where did she go? And in Fairclough's book, he said she was helped to escape to Canada to keep her safe. And you may be asking, to keep her safe from what? Why was she a target in the first place? Well, it said Mary Kelly had previously been in possession of, and therefore had knowledge of, a very important piece of paper. A marriage certificate which showed one of her friends, Annie Crook, a Catholic and a commoner, had indeed married the Duke of Clarence. And that is as much detail as I'm going to go into for this one, friends. As I said at the start, you can dig deeper and deeper with this one, but I thought it would be an interesting mystery to bring to you. As always, let me know what you really think about this one. Is Melvin Fairclough right? Is his book spot on or not? Would love to hear your thoughts on this. And that really does bring us to the end of this season where we have been opening the mystery files. So hope you've enjoyed all the different mysteries that I've covered, and will join me next week for the start of a completely different topic. Could not be more different. But until then, as always, you take care of yourself.